My name is Ember. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Glasgow, Scotland. Life here is usually calm. The streets are full of gray stone buildings, small cafes, and busy people walking to work. I work as a part-time art teacher at a small community college. I spend most of my free time painting, reading, or going for walks in the park. I like quiet things, but my life hasn't been very quiet lately. In fact, it turned upside down a few weeks ago, and nothing has been the same since. I'm married to Stark. He's 35, and he works as a nurse at a private hospital just outside the city. He's the kind of person people don't notice at first. Soft-spoken, kind, and never looking for attention. But once you know him, you realize how solid he is. He listens when others speak. He helps without being asked. And when he loves deeply. That's why I married him. We've been together for 6 years, and every year I feel lucky to share life with him. Or at least, I used to feel that way before everything changed. It started one normal Tuesday. I remember because I had a class that ended early, and I decided to surprise Stark by visiting him at work. I bought 2 coffees and walked into the hospital, smiling like a silly schoolgirl. But something felt strange the moment I stepped inside. The receptionist gave me a cold look. A security guard stood near the elevator. I didn't understand why until I saw 2 people from Human Resources walking down the hall, speaking in low voices. And then I heard his name. "Stark Reed has been suspended pending investigation," one of them said. I froze. Suspended? What investigation? I ran outside and called him immediately. His phone rang, but he didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I waited near the parking lot, hoping to see him come out. After about 20 minutes, I saw him walking toward me, shoulders low, face pale. He looked like someone who had lost everything. We sat in the car in silence for a minute. Then I asked, "What happened?" He didn't speak right away. Finally, he said, "They think I lied about my degree. They say there's no record of it anymore." I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "You finished your degree at Aberdeen. I saw your certificate. I was there on graduation day." He nodded slowly. "Yes, but today the HR team said there's no file in the hospital system. No scanned copy. No email proof. Nothing. They think I made it all up to get hired." I stared at him in disbelief. "That's not possible. You showed them the documents when you were hired." "I did," he said. "I uploaded everything to their system. They accepted it. I passed all the background checks. I've worked there for nearly 5 years. This just doesn't make sense." I could hear the hurt in his voice. I could see it in his eyes. He had never lied to anyone in his life, especially not about something so serious. I knew Stark. He wasn't a liar, and he wasn't a cheater. We drove home in silence. That night, we barely ate. He sat in the kitchen with his laptop, opening old emails and files. I stood beside him as he searched for proof. but the file he had uploaded 5 years ago, the scanned copy of his nursing degree, was gone. The email confirming receipt from HR was missing too. It was as if someone had erased the whole thing. Every document, every message, every small piece of evidence had vanished. "I don't understand," he kept repeating. "How can everything be gone?" We both stayed up late trying to remember anything that could help. Then Stark remembered that he had emailed the certificate to himself from his university email when he graduated. He searched through his inbox, and finally, after nearly an hour, he found it. A PDF copy of his degree with a date, a signature, and the university seal. "There," I said, pointing at the screen. "That proves it. That's your real degree." But Stark didn't smile. "Yes, but they'll say it's fake, or that I made it recently. They want a document from their own system." The next morning, Stark sent an email to his old university asking them to confirm his degree. They replied the same day. They said he had indeed graduated with full marks, and they attached a letter of confirmation. But again, the hospital said they had to do their own internal investigation. Stark was not allowed to come to work. He had to stay home and wait. The days that followed were hard. People talked. Some coworkers stopped replying to his messages. Friends acted strangely. Even some of my colleagues asked questions. "Is it true? Did he really fake it?" I wanted to scream at them. "No, he didn't. He's not like that. He worked night shifts. He took care of patients when others were asleep. He held the hands of the dying. He didn't cheat anyone." One afternoon, I went to the hospital myself and asked to speak to someone from HR. A woman named Fiona met me. She didn't smile. She explained coldly, "We have to follow procedures. We are not saying your husband is guilty. We are saying that there is no longer evidence of his qualification in our system." I asked, "But how is that his fault? Systems can fail. Files can get deleted." She said, "Not without someone doing it. And we have reason to believe it may have been him." That night, I told Stark everything. He listened quietly, then said something I didn't expect. "What if someone else deleted it?" I looked at him. "You think someone inside the hospital did this?" He nodded. "There's one person who always had problems with me. Darren. He's a senior nurse. He applied for the position I got 5 years ago. He told me back then, 'You're not better than me.' I never thought much of it. But maybe he held a grudge." It was possible. Stark was well liked by patients. He had recently been recommended for a new leadership role. If Darren wanted that role too, this could have been his way of removing Stark from the competition. We needed help. I remembered that one of my old art students, Beth, now worked in hospital IT. I reached out to her and asked if she could talk. We met at a small cafe near the university. I told her everything. She listened, then said, "If the file was deleted from the hospital system, there's a log. Every file deleted or moved is recorded. They can't erase that. I felt a small spark of hope. "Could you check?" She looked around and then said, "I'll try, but I have to be careful. I don't want to lose my job." When I told Stark about the meeting, he looked at me with tired eyes. "Thank you," he said, "for not giving up on me." I touched his hand. "I know who you are. That's enough." For now, we had to wait again, but this time, we had a thread, a clue, a direction. Maybe soon we would have proof. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next few days felt long and heavy. Stark didn't leave the house much. He spent most of his time reading news, checking his emails, or staring out the window with a distant look. I knew he felt like a shadow of himself. He had always been proud of his work. Now, he couldn't even wear his uniform without feeling shame. It wasn't fair. He was being treated like a liar, and the people who should have stood by him had turned away so quickly. One morning, Beth finally messaged me. She said she had checked the hospital's internal file system after hours when no one else was around. She didn't send much by text. She only wrote, "I found something. Can we meet in person?" My heart jumped. I showed the message to Stark. He looked at it, then said quietly, "Let's go." We met Beth the same afternoon in the back corner of a small book cafe. She arrived with a tired but serious expression. She pulled out a folder from her bag. Inside were printed sheets of system logs and user activity records from the hospital's file database. "I wasn't supposed to access these," she said, "but I wanted to know the truth." She pointed to one page. "This line shows your certificate file was uploaded 5 years ago from your email. The time and date match the start of your contract, so the document was there." Stark leaned closer. "Okay, so I did upload it." "Yes. But look at this next part. 2 months ago, someone accessed your HR folder from a different account. That account belonged to Darren. He opened your folder and renamed your degree file. Then he deleted it. A day later, he uploaded a blank document with a similar file name. That new file had no data inside it. It was just an empty page." I felt my mouth go dry. I looked at Stark. His hands were shaking. Beth continued, "The system keeps these logs for only 90 days. If this had happened a few weeks later, we might never have known. But the evidence is still there. For now." She gave us a copy of everything. "You need to act quickly. Share this with someone higher up. Someone who can't ignore it." When we got home, Stark sat down and read every line in the log again. Then he wrote a long email to the hospital's legal office and attached the file logs. His email was calm, respectful, but clear. He asked them to reopen the case and investigate the actions of Darren James, the senior nurse. That night, for the first time in weeks, Stark slept without waking up in the middle of the night. I could hear his deep breathing and I felt thankful. Just knowing that the truth was no longer hidden gave both of us a little peace. The next morning, the hospital replied. They said they had received the documents and were forwarding the evidence to their investigation team. They promised to contact us again within 5 business days. The waiting was hard. I could tell Stark was nervous. He tried to stay busy, but every time he heard a phone ring or a knock at the door, his body tensed. We knew we had proof, but we also knew that power doesn't always like to admit mistakes. On the 4th day, the hospital called. They asked Stark to come in for a meeting. They said members of the investigation team, HR, and a hospital lawyer would be present. Stark said yes. Then he looked at me. "Can you come with me?" "Of course," I said. We arrived at the hospital the next morning. It felt strange walking through the same doors that had once welcomed him and now saw him as a problem. People looked at us as we passed. Some looked away. Others stared with quiet curiosity. One person even whispered, "That's him." Inside the meeting room, 4 people were already seated. The head of HR, a man named Mr. Grant, asked us to sit. His voice was serious but calm. "Mr. Reed," he began, "we've reviewed the documents you submitted. Our investigation confirms that your original degree file was deleted from our system by another staff member without your knowledge or permission. The logs you provided match with our internal system records." Stark didn't move. He just listened. "We also checked the university's confirmation and your original background check," Mr. Grant continued. "Everything supports your claim. Therefore, we are ending the investigation against you. You are cleared of all suspicion." I felt a rush of emotion in my chest. Stark lowered his head and covered his face with his hand. He didn't cry, but I could see the weight finally begin to leave him. "We deeply regret this situation," the HR manager said. "It should never have reached this point." Stark raised his head slowly. "And what about Darren?" he asked. The room went quiet. "That matter is being handled separately," the lawyer replied. "But disciplinary action has already begun." They offered Stark his position back and said he could return to work the next week if he wished. He thanked them politely but didn't give an answer right away. We left the meeting in silence. Outside, I asked him how he felt. "I don't know," he said. "I'm relieved, but also tired and angry." I understood. Clearing his name had taken every bit of strength he had. And still, the people who were supposed to protect him had failed him. He had lost weeks of peace, confidence, and trust. Back at home, Stark sat on the couch for a long time. Then he said, "I don't want to go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever." I sat next to him. "You don't have to. You can choose what's right for you." "I just need time," he said, "to feel like myself again." That evening we cooked dinner together, we played music, we danced a little in the kitchen like we used to before all of this happened. And even though the wound was still fresh, something inside both of us felt lighter. A few days later, the hospital made a public statement. They didn't use Stark's name, but they said, A recent internal review uncovered a case of file tampering involving employee records. Appropriate action has been taken, and the affected employee has been fully cleared. We both read it. It wasn't much, but it was something. At least the truth was no longer hiding in the shadows. Then, something unexpected happened. A small health clinic in another part of Glasgow reached out to Stark. They had heard about the situation through someone in the hospital network and asked if he would be open to meeting. They were looking for a new senior nurse, someone calm, experienced, and honest. Stark looked at me and smiled. "Maybe this is a fresh start." I smiled back. "Maybe it's exactly what you deserve." The following week, Stark went to meet the clinic director. The building was small and quiet, a peaceful change from the large hospital halls he had once walked through every day. The clinic manager, Mrs. Anderson, greeted him with a warm smile. She had read about what happened, and she told Stark that she respected his honesty and strength. "We don't judge people by rumors here," she said. "We look at their work, their values, and their heart." That simple sentence meant everything to him. When he came home that day, I saw something different in his eyes. The weight he had been carrying for so long was finally gone. He looked like himself again. My husband, the man I married, the man I believed in every single day. He took my hand and said, "I'm going to start fresh. Not just for me, but for us." His first week at the clinic was quiet, but healing. The staff were friendly, the patients kind. He didn't have to explain himself to anyone. They trusted him, and he could just do his job. After everything he had been through, the silence, the judgment, the fear, this felt like coming home. I asked him each night how things were going. He would smile and say, "It's peaceful. I can breathe again." One evening, as we sat together after dinner, he looked at me and said, "You never left my side. Even when I felt like I was nothing, you stood by me. Why?" I answered without thinking, "Because I knew you, and I never needed proof to believe in you." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes I thought about giving up, not just on the job, but on everything. But every time I looked at you, I remembered who I was." That night, we held each other a little longer. There were no more legal letters to open, no more people to convince. Just us. And that was more than enough. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, the world forgot the accusations. The whispers stopped. Some people who had once avoided us began to say hello again. A few even said sorry. But Stark didn't need their words. He had already moved on. He had grown stronger, not bitter. He had found peace, not revenge. Sometimes we still talked about what happened, not in anger, but with quiet understanding. We both knew how close he had come to losing everything. Not because he did something wrong, but because someone else made a selfish choice. A mistake can be fixed. A lie can destroy. That was the lesson we carried with us. Then one Saturday, we were invited to speak at a small conference on workplace ethics. Beth, the IT staff member who had helped us, had recommended Stark. She wanted people to hear his story, not just the pain, but the strength. Stark wasn't sure at first. He didn't want attention, but I reminded him, your voice could help someone else, someone who's being blamed unfairly right now, just like you were. So we went. The room was small, filled with young professionals and students. Stark stood at the front, quiet at first, then steady. He spoke simply. I didn't cheat, but I was treated like I did. I was suspended, questioned, and ignored. I lost my job. I almost lost myself. But the truth found its way through, and the people who stayed beside me, like my wife, like Beth, they gave me the strength to keep going. When he finished, the room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then more people joined. It wasn't loud, but it was honest. One woman came up to him afterward and said, "Thank you. My brother is facing something similar. Now I know how to help him." Later that night, we walked by the river, hand in hand. The wind was cold, but the city lights made the water shine. Stark stopped walking and looked at me. Do you remember that first night, when I told you they accused me? I nodded. Of course. I thought I would lose you. I squeezed his hand. You didn't, and you never will. He smiled and looked out at the water. Maybe some people will always believe the worst. Maybe some will always judge first, ask questions later. But I know now that the people who really matter, they'll wait, they'll listen, and they'll fight for the truth. I leaned against him, feeling proud, not just because he had cleared his name, but because he had stayed kind. He hadn't let bitterness take over. He had stayed true to himself and to us. Back home, Stark continued his work at the clinic. Patients loved him. Staff respected him. He wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. He was just living honestly day by day. And I kept teaching art, helping people express themselves through color and canvas. Sometimes life gives you storms you don't ask for. You lose your balance. You lose your name. But if you keep walking, if you hold the hand beside you, you come out stronger. You come out whole. My husband is not a cheater. He never was. And now, the world knows it too.